Welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This podcast is a production of Swaim Strategies, a consulting firm dedicated to nonprofit fundraising events. We're coming to you today from the studios of the AV department. Please welcome our hosts, Kristen Steele and Samantha Swaim.
Hello and welcome to the Fundraising Elevator, where we're all headed up. This is the final episode of season 3. Before we go on summer vacation, we are wrapping up this season with one of our most important partners in this work, and that is a conversation with Andy Dowsett of the AV department. So Andy is normally behind the scenes and is normally working with us on our live event production, on our virtual event production, our hybrid production, even the podcast production. And we're pulling Andy in front of the scenes today because he has a wealth of knowledge in understanding how nonprofits can really be impacted in their events and impact their fundraising through the use of their technology in their production. So let me introduce to you Andy Dowsett. Andy has spent over 10 years helping nonprofits deliver high-impact live and virtual events. With roots in audio engineering, he's grown into live streaming, video production, and networking across modern live event workflows. Based in San Diego, Andy serves as a technical project manager for the AV department, overseeing timelines, budgets, vendors, crews, and the technical direction for shows across the West Coast and beyond. He works closely with the AV department team to design robust production systems that make client events more engaging and measurably more effective. And before we start the conversation, I want to also say, on a personal note, Andy was the person who saved us during the time when we could no longer gather during COVID. Every technical challenge we positioned for him of any virtual event, hybrid event, how do we do this in a different format? He would say, I'll figure it out. And a few minutes later, he would have an answer for us. So, Andy, we are excited to dive into this conversation. Thank you for joining us here on the podcast.
Absolutely. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yeah.
Well, I want to start first big picture because you've been at the AV department for 10 years. I know you have a background in audio engineering. How did you first get into specifically this work in the nonprofit sector?
Sure. Well, it was really a kind of a happy accident. So like you said, I'm a trained audio engineer. That's really how I started. And AV department was really my second job right out of school. So, worked with these guys for a long time. Turns out there's a pretty large need for, high quality audio at fundraising events. It's a big issue, words need to be heard. There needs to be a lot of clarity. And, it really helps when people feel it, not just see it. And audio's kind of unknown to most. It's actually how you feel it for the most part as far as, intelligibility. So
we always tell our nonprofit partners, if you can't hear the event, why have it? That's like the number one thing we recommend spending money on. The number of organizations we've worked with where they've said like, oh, Uncle Joe brings in his sound system from the church. And it's like, wait, you're talking about a ballroom full of 600 people. Hold on a second. We need good audio, especially when you're utilizing your event as a way to tell your story. Yeah. So we've always appreciated that we know when you're working with our nonprofit partners that they're always going to have great audio, no feedback. It's going to be clear. We're going to have auctioneers with the correct microphone, all the kind of good stuff that is required.
As the scriptwriter in the room, super appreciative that those stories get heard.
Yeah.
I think folks spend a lot of time and energy on both video and scripting. And if nobody can hear it, nobody can hear it. Andy, we're going to get into the details of some of the specific event tech and how that supports great shows and fundraising in a minute. But let's paint the bigger picture for folks, because I do think there's a little trepidation for nonprofits around the idea of AV. I don't know tech. I don't know what I'm doing. What do I need? Will they be able to do all the things? So let's orient folks into how you approach technology solutions for clients. Does the nonprofit have to understand your work to have a great show?
Sure. Awesome question. So one of the first things that we look for is what's the highest value at the lowest cost. As you know, nonprofits, usually have pretty strict budgets, totally understandable. So we really try and find things that have that high value, low cost, and also something that doesn't take the place of 10 other solutions because it's so expensive, right? So when we're implementing something, can we not do 10 other things because this is so expensive? That's one of the first parts. And then the other thing is quick setup time. So we try and cater the idea around something that can be pre-packaged and set up on site very quickly. Cutting down on labor hours is actually a big way to save money and cost on site. It also allows, 1 day setup and show, all happening on the same day instead of a setup day before. Sometimes it's necessary, but for the most part, that's what we try and do. And then the other thing is this a solution that's usable by more nonprofits than just one, right? And as far as how much they have to understand, our goal is really nothing. So, that's kind of the power of what we do is they don't have to understand anything except for, where they want to have their event, and what date it's on, and then we kind of walk them through what's needed technically to make that work, and then we try and hold their hand through the entire process. So
I think a couple of things I want to make sure people hear in this is that you are actually working with them. So we're all experiencing and have experienced over time venues sort of narrowing and narrowing and narrowing what a rental window looks like.
Yeah.
Meaning the time you have for both load in and the event. And gone are the days of, there's a lot of competition out there. So gone are the days of you being able to access the space for multiple days to do setup and all of those things. So you working with nonprofits to find their efficiency, but you also, the volume of nonprofit events you do, you're constantly learning forward and able to apply that to the next. And we'll take a look at that in the technology as well. But I think when people are looking at partnerships, that's really a huge aspect of benefit that you all offer.
absolutely, and having partners such as fundraising event co and Swaim Strategies, obviously, all these little things add up to just an even better show and a better experience for the nonprofits.
Yeah.
So
Well, before we got into recording the podcast, we were talking about there are some events where the production is so immense, including things like, big sporting events like Monday Night Football, you would think is just like it happens every day of the week, including, any other athletic broadcast or the Grammy Awards, things like that. There's so much happening in those environments and hundreds and thousands of people making that happen. But when you are talking about an event where you are kind of the traditional gala, bringing people into a room and having a program, oftentimes with a fundraising ask or an auctioneer, what are the basic things that go into that? What does the behind the scenes look like? Is it a crew of 50 people in 12 hours, or is it more streamlined than that?
yeah, so our crews for most shows we do, I'd say range between 4 and 8 on site. And we try and make most of the work happening during pre-production. So as far as, budget planning, diagrams, run of show, if there's a virtual element, that does take a little bit more planning. Preparing how you're going to get remote presenters in, if there's any sort of website that needs to be built for people to watch a live stream. But then on site, our day starts usually at 9 or 10 a.m. If it's an in-city show. And then we will go all the way to, past midnight sometimes. And let's see. I'm just trying to think of a typical day for you. So
Tell me about what the production elements are. Todd, who you work with once, told me there's just some basic things that always make a great event. What are not thinking about hybrid and virtual, but what are those basic things that you see in every gala?
Sure. Well, we always see, some sort of MC and auctioneer really working together. And so our main job on site is usually to complement them as best we can and set them up for success. So we always see that. We usually see some form of video technology, whether that's, done beforehand or it's live. And then we usually see either an auction or paddle raise or both. And those are kind of the parts that we really go out of our way to make it sound good, since they are kind of the biggest fundraising sections of the show.
Yeah, I think that the video element is
Yep.
one that we often see people spend a ton of time and resource and effort into the production of the video and then never actually hear it in the ballroom until the day of and find that it hasn't been mixed well for a big space or a live audience. So we actually partner with you a lot on your video production side as well. So we frequently work with you because we know in the ballroom it will play at a quality that everyone can hear. But also just that ability to have two big screens that everyone in the room can see. We were just doing an event with an organization who had used a different production company the year before, and they said there was one small screen and no one was able to see the content unless you were sitting right on that side of the room. So you all are very aware of, are the visuals able to be something that everyone can see? You typically have two big screen, content visible that allow us to include PowerPoint and video, and then always great audio. And sometimes that audio includes music, which is a whole nother element. If you have like musicians on your stage, performers on your stage, that's an element that, having professionals that can speak to what the musicians need just relieves the nonprofit from having to be an expert on how to set up a band,
Yeah. I think the thing that I understand because of how you all do it is that you follow the story, whatever the medium, right? And you allow that story to be dominant in whatever medium it's happening in. So podium mic, podium. Great. That's where the story is. That's where the focal point is right now. Please turn your attention to the screens for a video.
Yeah.
Those screens, it's allowed to be dominant. Hey, my auctioneer is on a stage in the middle of the room now. Great. That's where the narrative is. That's what's dominant. So that they're not competing with one another and that none of those areas of narrative are a side pony, right? Like they are when the spotlight is on them, so to speak, the spotlight is on them.
Yeah.
And I think you all bring that to the table when you're working with clients. I also know that clients bring to the table some misconceptions about AV and what that looks like. What are some of the biggest misconceptions that nonprofits have when they think about AV at their events?
Sure. Well, the biggest one that I see is that AV should be the last thing you spend money on. And obviously, you have to get the venue, you have to get the production, you have to get the catering and all these other things. But if you can't hear or see what's happening, it's really hard to enjoy or even, participate in the event, especially for your attendees. And the other thing I would say is a misconception is that, venue contracts are non-negotiable. So, venues putting strict rules around, well, you can't provide this or that, you can't bring in this vendor or that vendor. As long as you haven't signed yet, almost anything is negotiable.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I would just encourage folks to, really take a look and see what's possible with the venue.
Well, the venue is an interesting piece of the puzzle
Yeah.
because every venue is so different. We have some event venues that are sort of smaller, private, independently owned, where bringing in a partner AV company is definitely a requirement. We have others where they've spent a ton of money building resources in, but the resources haven't been kept up, haven't been maintained. They're not really well suited for the needs. And then we see hotels and convention centers where they're like their own beast because they typically have requirements built in. And to Andy's point, the venue contract is negotiable. And we actually frequently bring Andy into that conversation early in the venue agreement so that we can help to navigate what is the way we can get the best production for the cheapest dollar amount for the nonprofit's budget. And usually that means in a hotel space that we are not hanging things like trusses. As soon as we start to go toward hanging items, the volume and price point goes up significantly because we have to pay riggers and things like that. And I appreciate you all have floor-based solutions, which just always makes for a lower cost for our AV production budgets.
There are likely multiple ways to do the thing.
Right.
And I think nonprofits understanding that their venue contract can govern how AV works for their event and also how catering can work for their event should be something they're looking at when they're looking at that contract.
Right. Well, I want to know a little bit on the flip side of that conversation, which is what are the biggest ways you see AV impacting events?
Sure. I know I sound like a broken record here, but I'm gonna go back to sound.
Yeah.
So good sound versus bad sound. Sound can impact it, I would say, the most, and it's actually probably where a majority of the company was founded, was by fixing that issue for nonprofit events. And if people can't hear the auctioneer when they're selling items, items won't get sold. If they can't hear the message that a prominent figure, part of the organization, and how they've benefited from working with that organization, how that's happened, then they're not going to feel the story, right?
Right.
And so yeah, I mean, sound is probably the biggest part of that, and then the other part is AV has a really strong opportunity to complement and enhance everything that's happening without getting in the way. So, like for example, as you were saying before, bringing down the lights when the videos play, bringing up the lights so the auctioneer can see all the paddles in the audience, making sure the mics are ready to go and fully tuned and sound checked before they walk on stage. Just all these things to remove the friction that's normally, coupled when you think about AV and live events.
It's true. There's a lot of like psychological cueing that happens through AV. The simple fact that we bring the house lights down when we're starting the program gets everyone focused, right? Without them being told shh or waiting for like clinking of glasses to start. Just bringing house lights down cues everyone to get focused. We also frequently use video as a way to capture people's attention. So if we know before the paddle raise, when we tell that story, it's so much easier to get everyone attentive to the story if it's in a video format than another speaker on the stage. And in that video, we frequently bring the house lights down. We're going to talk about an event we just did together in a minute, but in that event, we didn't have control over the house lights. The hotel had just done a remodel and the hotel had budget constraints. And so they had very limited options for the settings of their house lights. And we couldn't bring the house lights down. And so the solution became that all of the stage lighting shifted to a darker color to indicate that we were bringing the house lights down.
Yeah.
So I always feel like AV can easily be overlooked, and yet it is the thing that helps the guest experience.
Well, and what I think is really helpful for folks to think about too is you are building the AV for the room that will be at your event. And that became super clear to me when we were all working together on an event, and one of the main speakers was on the stage sound checking. And they were like, "Oh my God, I'm so loud. Should I pull back from the mic?" And I said, "No, one, they'll adjust for you, but two, we're going to add 650 people to this room."
Right.
And they looked at me and were like, "Oh, right." So it's like you all have an imagination and technical knowledge of this is the room, this is the sound and lighting and all the things we're doing in the room, and you can see it with the 700 or the 650 people in it and know what that's going to impact and what needs to happen so that when all those folks are there, it still sounds amazing. It still looks amazing, which I was like, yeah, totally.
Well, go ahead. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Nope, I was just going to agree. Absolutely.
Well, we're going to take a short break, and when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how we've seen this play out with specific events. So we'll be right back with Andy Dowsett.
Are you ready to engage supporters and grow your base with your own podcast? Then let us introduce you to our partners at the AV department in Portland, Oregon. In addition to delivering exceptional live event audiovisual production and videography, they also have a top-tier production studio and an expert team ready to take your content ideas to the next level. Contact the AV department to schedule a consultation and start bringing your podcast vision to life.
Welcome back. We are here with Andy Dowsett, one of our favorite humans who works with one of our favorite partners, the AV department. I've heard you say, Andy, that the real magic at an event for you is getting out of the way so that the talent and the organization can be highlighted, which I love. That is that's the beauty of best behind the scenes production work. How do you design for emotion and generosity without the technology becoming a distraction?
Sure. For me, it's really a realization of whose show it is. And so we're really there to support the MC and the auctioneer, because people are listening to them. They're not listening to us. And I kind of like to think about it like they're the lead singers and we're the band, right? If we're not doing our job, it's really hard for them to do theirs. And they're really the ones that drive all of the giving and everything else. So most of our recommendations actually come from MCs and auctioneers who have been able to give their message accurately at events, and they enjoyed that experience so much that's actually, so they basically recommend us. I think another way that we can get out of the way is all of the prep for the show. So doing the show multiple times before it actually happens, it's really hard to know what scenarios are going to happen in a live environment, and going through even mentally as many of them beforehand as possible. It helps us get out of the way and helps, trips from happening, mic slips from happening, feedback from happening, anything that makes you realize we're there, right? That's really what we're going for.
Yeah. The learning environment is one I want to tap into before we talk about our case study. When we're in a conference setting, that's where I actually see the getting out of the way because you've done the prep happen so frequently, because in that environment, you so frequently have educators and speakers that show up with a last minute change to their presentation. And to me, that's actually a sign of a really good speaker, because they've been paying attention to all the other content that's taking place, and they want to make sure that their content is reflective of the time of this conference, that they'll make a little adjustment and then show up at the last minute and say, can you make this work? And we have been in learning environments before as speakers where we've been speaking and on stage where the answer was no, I can't make this work, from another AV team, or was, these are the restrictions or limitations you have as a speaker. Like, I was planning to walk among the room and do group facilitation. No, you have to stay in this 1-inch spot. Or I was planning to advance my slides and be able to see the speaker view of the slides because I have notes there. Oh, we don't have a confidence monitor for you to do that with. In fact, you have to cue us when you want to move the slide. There's so many elements like that that we've run into as speakers on stage, that when it is handled seamlessly and it is that any option we need is there, like, yeah, you need to walk on stage, off stage, no problem. You need to advance your own slides or see it in this particular view, no problem. It just makes for the content to be front and center instead of the tech need being an obstacle. And you all recently came on board with a conference we were doing, and the difference of having you all knowing in advance and prepared and having walked through it in advance, we were more comfortable on stage. Other speakers at the conference were more comfortable on stage. And it makes a difference from the professionalism of what's presented as well, because you do your work in advance and get out of the way.
Well, and the speakers as a speaker, I don't want to be aware of AV either.
Right. Yes.
I'm sort of small barfing, trying to get my nerves under control to present this information in a way to an audience. I don't want to also be managing things that are outside of my skill set.
Yeah.
And that to me is the strength of seamlessness and invisibility that you all bring, is that I don't have to, none of that's on my radar.
Yeah.
I can go have my own personal crisis about how I'm doing and what I need to present. I don't also need to worry about
setting up
will that
the
show
projector.
up? Can I see my notes? All of those things. Yeah.
I cannot tell you how many times, Andy, I've shown up to speak at a conference and I'm the one setting up the projector. And I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. Well, so let's talk about the event we just produced. So at the end of our fundraising event season, we did work with San Diego LGBT Community Center. It is their annual Luminary Lunch. And this year, it was the third year of the event. It was in a large ballroom, 650 people. And we had a couple of different tech things that we applied that I wanted to talk about because I think sometimes people don't even know that it's possible, right? Like that being able to integrate some different things are possible. And in fact, there's other events too that I want to be able to kind of pull from. But in this particular event, we had, I'm going to first name the items and then Andy ask you to talk about a couple of them. In a 1-hour program with a special appeal, we utilize a handheld camera, and I want to dive into that. Voiceover announcements, performers that had keyboards and microphones, so we had to have inputs for all of those, PowerPoint that then led into video content, and the video all had to have audio attached, lighting for the stage, uplighting for decor, room lighting, captions on the stage, an ASL interpreter, and a donation thermometer. So these were all tech elements that we integrated in. And I want to ask about a couple of these specifically, because I think lighting, screens, video, performers, those are kind of everyday. A lot of organizations utilize those and have had that kind of AV prep before. But there are a couple of tools that we've started, a couple of tools we've started integrating that I want to talk more about. Andy, can you talk about the handheld camera and a little bit about how you all are utilizing it and what it's doing to impact fundraising?
Yeah. So traditionally, most events are done with a couple cameras in the back of the room. You have a close-up camera that follows, and you have a wide shot. We recently integrated more of a dynamic approach. So one of our cameras, and it's usually the same videographer, he'll walk around with a gimbal camera and basically follow the action up close.
And a gimbal like stabilizes that camera, right? So he can move, but it's not like a shaky image like if I was holding a phone.
Yeah, it's a very smooth image. So you most of the time can't even tell they're walking or moving at all. It looks, sometimes it even looks like one of those crane cameras are called jibs, which kind of swoop in and you'll see them on a set. It allows for that smoothness. What we can do walk-ups with it. So we can walk in front of the person walking to the stage and really grabs the attention of the audience and engages them more. They're more interested in what's about to happen or what's going on. They feel more involved, I guess.
Well, in this particular event,
I just want to not let the moment pass that folks may still not understand. What does that mean? Where's that going? That feed, that camera feed is actually being played on the big screens that are happening in the room. So where maybe your PowerPoint is happening or your videos are getting played, when they cut to this camera, the feed from that camera is going up there like a TV. So the folks in the very, very back of that room get an actual front row seat to the CEO walking up on stage or the musicians walking up on stage.
In this particular case, we used it for 3 different things. We had a lot of honorees in the room and they're coming from all different places. And so capturing those honorees walking on stage, we played walk-up music. So they were walking up pumped with a vibe, excited, taking their time getting to the stage because they were dancing. And so that was able to be captured and shown on the screen in a way that actually like helped the whole room to feel that vibe.
Right.
Then in the fundraising moment, when our auctioneer leaves the stage, as that camera is panning, you see more people raise paddles or give or, engage with the giving because they see that they are going to be on camera, which I think is powerful. But also it allows the fundraising auctioneer to be front and center in real life in a big way, where when they're on a faraway stage, it's hard to do, but when they're moving through the crowd and that camera is really close on them, I think it makes it more intimate, which is, I think, powerful. The second one, though, that I think is unique to this event, but is a solution that we all should consider, is ASL interpretation. So typically with ASL interpretation, we have a single person or two people that are tag teaming back and forth, because with ASL, it's a lot of hard work to interpret, and you only want an ASL interpreter that is working in small blocks of time. So oftentimes for a long event, you'll have two that alternate back and forth so they get breaks. With that having to be a lit, spot on your stage, and then a camera that picks up just the ASL interpreter and puts them on the big screen so everyone can see them. And in this environment, we were planning on that. And the ASL interpreter that we normally work with was unable to join us in person. And so we called on an ASL interpreter in another state that we knew was a big ally and supporter. And we had her participate via Zoom. So, Andy, I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about just for me, it was an easier scenario. I don't know what the experience is for you, though, to be able to tap in an ASL interpreter and what kind of setup you need to do that.
Sure. Well, COVID obviously had its flaws, but it did make things much easier for production teams.
Yeah.
Some of these platforms like Zoom, they really spent a lot of money in the engineering side to make production possible. And so that's one of probably the biggest tools we use is we'll use Zoom to bring in people remotely. It allows us to put their video feed on different windows. We can put it in the corner of the screen so it's not in the way. We can make it, on a TV, even under the screens. So there's lots of ways to do that. But basically, you need a video switcher. Most can handle it. You need a Zoom account and a Zoom computer and an internet connection. And then anyone that could be in the room can technically be remote and brought into the room.
Which is amazing. And it was such a simple, streamlined solution because our ASL interpreter was present the entire time, was able to interpret every little element of the event without having to deal with a bright light in the room or another distraction in the room. The other thing, though, tapping into Zoom, is that we pre-pandemic used to have live captioners sitting in the room with a captioning device, literally typing as the program was going on, and that would create captions on our screens in the room. And it was usually about $1,000 to $1,200 for a live captioner to be present. You utilized Zoom captions for this. Can you talk about, are Zoom captions reliable and a feasible option for most folks?
Yeah. So we first started doing that because we were at an event and, people are on Zoom calls and Teams calls all day.
Yeah.
And they said, why do I have to pay for a captioner when I usually click a button? Right. And so that was essentially the expectation. And they essentially decided it was really, really, really good enough, it gets you 95% of the way there. And for, the cost of a Zoom subscription, it's a great solution.
Yeah.
The other thing that's cool about it is if someone goes up on stage and they speak a different language, it'll actually translate in real time to the language that you choose. So we did an event in Seattle, and that exact thing happened where somebody went up on stage and they started speaking Spanish, and the captions continued in English in the room, all done through Zoom. So pretty cool.
Well, and I think, often the burden gets put where it shouldn't get put in those situations, meaning on the folks who utilize the tool
Right.
as an audience member. And so it is also in budget line items the first thing that gets cut. And so some of these solutions actually allow it to be integrated as a baseline, regardless of whether you think you have 100 people in the room who use it or not. And I think realizing that so many people, because we turn sound off when we're on social media, watch and take in content with captions, that a lot of folks just use captions now. That's a way we're taking in information. And so being able to utilize these things in your concept of universal design as a baseline to create the most open space for the most people, this becomes a really easy way to do that technologically.
Yeah, agree.
Do you want to talk about fundraising? and
Sure.
thermometers and all of that.
Yeah, you want to dive into the donation thermometer?
Just because that's something that as a tech solution has been a game changer.
That's true. So pre-pandemic, Andy, we were not using thermometers at events. Like it just was unheard of because for the most part, there was a belief that it set a limitation or a cap on the fundraising. Like you might raise a ton of money in that room and only have the thermometer set for a modest amount and then the fundraising stops. So one, we had to learn in the virtual space because in the virtual space, acknowledgement isn't a paddle going up and a room full of people cheering. It is like typing in your name and seeing it appear on the screen. But what we discovered was that the donation thermometer actually met all of those needs people have of being able to be recognized, being able to be seen as a part of the event, whether they were giving $5 or $5 million, their name could appear on the screen. And you and I have collaborated a lot on how to really maximize that moment. And the thing that I appreciate about the setup you all have done is that you've worked with us on each of those thermometers to figure out how to integrate them into the screen so that the viewers in the audience can see, no matter how big the room is. And also give us some control over things like pledge gifts or pre-committed gifts, where someone who's not utilizing a donation in the moment, like, you know, our $25,000 donor might not be putting it on a credit card right then. We can actually cue that through you all because you have created basically like an overlay that mimics the thermometer. So we've been able to collaborate with you on leveraging that thermometer as a tool that really exponentially increases fundraising. And that wasn't something that existed before. And what we've seen with it is when done well, not only will it give you the easy button for recognition and allowing lots of folks to get recognized, but also it allows us to then show the audience the impact that they're having and celebrate that together. This particular event, we were using a thermometer we hadn't used before. And you know, prior to the event, Andy, we gave you that thermometer and you guys spent lots of time on that screen making sure that like it was enlarged and we could see it, that it was the size that was visible, that we weren't cutting any important information off. And all of that impacts fundraising, especially if you do the work in advance to make sure that it's set up for success, meaning it's branded well, you have a goal that's actually going to help you with your fundraising versus set a limitation for you. And more often than not, we're actually leveraging that thermometer as a big way to recognize people quickly. Meaning if we have a ton of people like the event we just did, it was a lunch event. In a lunch event, when people are like, I have to get back to work, we don't have time to do a paddle raise because of the volume of time it takes to register everyone and get them their paddle and the volume of time it takes to actually execute level by level by level. Whereas we can tell everyone at the exact same time to pick up their phone and make their contribution and see all of those names showing up on the screen over and over and over and over. And so that was a tool that was a game changer in this particular event.
Andy, I'm wondering if you can walk us through a moment where the right technology visibly moved the needle on donations. Like you could feel the room shift.
There was a recent show that we did in Portland, actually, for the Oregon Food Bank. And I think we were at the Red in Portland. And they wanted something a little bit unique where they wanted a thermometer that wasn't just dollars based. They had you could basically contribute donations, volunteer, advocacy, or partner, and each one would basically uptick the thermometer one notch. It doesn't matter if you give an amount or you partner; they're both worth the same amount on the thermometer.
Mm-hmm.
And it was in the shape of a flower because the event was called Bloom. And when they first started out, there was only a few notches on the bottom. And then as time went on and we started showing how it was filling up, every time we'd show it, the whole room would light up and change. People would cheer, people would get emotional. They would, either donate more or commit more. It was very, very obvious very quickly that it was working. So
Well,
That's just a recent example.
I want to flag, and Andy, you probably are not embedded in the nonprofit world enough to understand community-centric versus donor-centric, but there is a model right now happening of community-centric fundraising, which is this like pull of how do we value all contribution? And that's what you just did. That thermometer was very community-centric in its nature, and also allowed for people to give in multiple ways, not just donation.
Yep. Well, and I think what's also what you're getting at, Andy, there when the thermometer came up and you saw the room happen at this event we all did together last week, we had a very clear idea that once we started fundraising, that the thermometer would always be on a screen so that people didn't miss that opportunity to see their name or be reminded, hey, we're only X shy of our goal, or look at that. And so I think people remembering that is a story too of the group project we're here to work on together.
Yeah.
And you actually have a barometer of success, which at other events before this technology, we didn't always know unless we were telling them, hey, our goal tonight is $100,000 and we're only halfway there, right? This is very clearly people understand like, okay, we're not there yet, and can continue to lean into that piece. So you have this activity that's constantly happening and a thermometer that's constantly growing, and you're engaging people and in a different way doing that. And I love that you could visibly see when that was up that the room shifted and you saw the lean in happen.
Do you remember, Andy, during a lot of our virtual events and still now in our hybrid events, how often we use that mini appeal look?
Yeah.
It's essentially we've designed something with Andy where he helped us to take not the whole thermometer because we moved away from the fundraising and the moment in the program where we're actively raising money, but just take that most recent gift that's appearing on the thermometer and have that present at the bottom of the screen so no one misses the chance to get recognized. And that was a brilliant solution. I was like, how do we keep recognition going? And Andy's like, well, the top donor can always be present. And I'm like, yes. You've also come up with another interesting thing having to do with sponsor benefits. And I'm wondering how you've seen technology impact sponsor benefits.
Sure. Well, one of the most common ways that we see sponsors get recognition is they essentially get their logo on a slide at the end of the program. And one of the things that we've been seeing more recently is they'll actually sponsor some form of digital signage within the event itself, whether that's an auction item slide or we're in an event venue downtown called Avenue Portland, where we have over a 100-foot projection wall that we can use for events. And one of the auction items for an event that happened recently was, I think it was Fly Anywhere Alaska Airlines flies. And to introduce the auction item, our brilliant event tech over there made this plane fly across the entire screen. Everybody was silent. The room was shaking. The sound was there. It sounded like a jet airplane was in the room.
It looked like a jet airplane was in the room too.
Yeah. But something really interesting happened after that was the sponsor actually wanted the same thing done again in another place because they're, it's more of an enhanced version of a recognition than they're used to.
Yeah.
We also did something similar in California, where instead of a wall, it was an 80-foot projection screen in the room. Very similar. It really grabs people's attention. It can also be, anything that the sponsor, stands for, whether it's a logo, or it's a brand, it's an idea that they have. Lots of opportunity and options. I
loved the video that we saw. I was not in the room during that event where the airplane took off, but I saw the video that was captured, and just you heard the jet engine, like you were sitting in the plane, like that revving of the jet engine right before you're about to take off. And then all of a sudden you saw the plane slowly start to appear with the nose appearing. And then it just rolled across the entire room utilizing the video screen and then took off, where all of a sudden the audio and the visual matched and then kind of doubled back across the room like it was in the sky far away. And I love that the sponsor saw that, loved it so much that my understanding from that organization is that that sponsor came back also and committed to a bigger contribution the following year. So I think that ability to work with a partner who you trust that you can get creative with can have a huge impact on your guest experience, your actual fundraising in the room, and even your sponsors and your sponsor relationships.
Well, and it allows you a collaboration,
Yeah.
right? It allows you to bring your AV partner in as a collaborator to help you ideate and problem solve. You don't have to show up and be like, oh, I know how we're going to do this. We're going to make a video of a 7, blah, blah,
Right.
blah, 7 flying across the room. But when you have good, imaginative people who are invested in your organization, they can bring those and their talent to the table to do that. Also, I think it encourages you to think about partnerships beyond a logo on a screen.
Yeah.
That events are experiential.
Yeah.
When you're putting people in a room having an experience together, those brands and those sponsors can be a part of that and in interesting ways.
Uh-oh, I'm brainstorming in my head already. I'm like, oh, we could have the ice cream truck arrive and Salt and Straw get delivered to everyone's plate.
I want to be at that event.
Right?
Right.
Well, we're going to take a short break. And when we come back, we're going to jump in the fundraising elevator. We'll be right back.
Change. It doesn't happen on its own. It happens on purpose. Thanks to nonprofits that believe a brighter future is not just possible, but needed and deserved. And that connect people to causes and turn moments of generosity into movements. That's why Bloomerang is built for purpose. To raise the bar on what's possible and help every act of giving lead to more. Because when the bottom line is a better world, no goal is too lofty. Bloomerang, built for purpose.
Welcome back. We are here with Andy Dowsett from the AV department, some of our favorite people. Andy, we ask everybody who's on the show to step into the fundraising elevator with us, where we're all headed up. What is one parting tip or words of wisdom you would offer our nonprofit superheroes out there so that they can continue heading up?
Sure. I would say really take the time to vet your AV team before hiring them. Don't just go with the option that seems the cheapest or most affordable. Maybe ask questions about the event, specific scenarios that you've seen happen and how they would solve them differently and what they've done in the past to, remedy those situations or fix them. Because essentially, what they're doing is they're helping you live storytell, right? And so who's gonna help you tell your story with the least amount of technical friction?
I love that. Well, you have brought amazing partnership and collaboration and solutions to the table. We are a far cry from the days where we needed a live captioner out of the room to hear the program, and you duct taped a headset to a phone so that she could hear and caption and give you that caption feed. We're now in the world where new technology every day becomes a possibility. And I appreciate that every single time I call you and say, how do we, you say, let me figure it out. And one of the coolest things that has shown up in the event space recently is that you have helped us figure out how language is no longer a barrier in events. When we have audiences that may speak multiple languages, the ability for them to scan a QR code and listen in their language of choice on their cell phone, or the ability for multiple languages to appear in the captions, or for a viewer to be able to choose what language they want their experience to be in, I think has just been the coolest. So thank you for always having a solution. Thank you for your partnership. Thank you for stepping from behind the scenes today. I know it's not your favorite place to be, but we appreciate you doing it. And this is a wrap for season 3. We are moving into summer break, where we're going to have 9 encore episodes that we've called together that are episodes that we feel are really, if you put them all together, they're a really good case study for prepping for your fall fundraising event. So we hope folks will stay tuned in or will enjoy some time off this summer. And we appreciate you joining us today, Andy.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
If folks want to get a hold of you and work with you, Andy, how should they do that?
Let's see. Well, you can go to our website, submit an inquiry there. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. if you call anybody within the company, they all have my contact info as well. So,
well, we will have links in the show notes of how to get a hold of the AV department. And Andy, thank you for joining us from behind the scenes today.
Thank you so much.
Take care.
The Fundraising Elevator is produced by Swaim Strategies at the studios of the AV department. The program is produced and directed by Steve Osborne, with audio engineering and original music by Dwayne Anderson and Heidi Christensen. Video production by John Collier. Graphic design by Pendulum Creative Group. And voiceover by Josh Boykin.
Friends, before we leave you, we want to ask for your help to make the podcast grow. If you enjoyed what you heard today, please like, follow, subscribe to the Fundraising Elevator. And if you're getting a lot out of the show, please share it with a friend and leave a review. These things help make sure that the podcast continues heading up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Your fundraising event doesn't have to start when guests walk into the room. It starts weeks before when supporters see your story, remember your mission, and feel invited to be part of something bigger. That's where Feather comes in. Feather helps nonprofits promote events, reach the right audience, and keep supporters engaged with digital ads, email, automation, and reporting all in one platform. Trusted by us at Swaim Strategies to promote our events, Feather has helped us to fill the room, raise more, and prove what worked without the guesswork. Visit feather.co to learn more. feathr.co to learn more.